So the first thing we're going to focus on is building out the 3 key components of good posture. And I believe that the hip hinge is going to ultimately allow that. So the first thing we're going to have our athlete do here is put the band around the neck. He's got it anchored to the foot, but we're going to do a little bit differently. We're going to have that left foot move back. So the first thing is we want the athlete to look straight ahead, find a spot on the wall, and allow the eyes to track all the way down to the floor. A common mistake, Rod, is the athletes just drop the head and they think that they're hinging, but you're really not. So if you face Rod, Josh, the first mistake that we're gonna see is, just dropping the chin, and he thinks that that's a hip hinge, but it's really not. The hip hinge is gonna be exactly what it says. The hips have to begin the movement. So by allowing the eyes to naturally track towards the floor, we now begin to actually create movement where we intend to create the movement from. So come back up. Second point, Rod, is you wanna make sure the athlete is pushing the hips backwards. Not just breaking at the lower back, but really driving the hips backwards. And when you're actually driving the hips backwards, you create some tension in the hamstrings. You want to be efficient out of your drives, out of your breaks. And if you're just lounging in your stance, your hamstrings haven't actually contracted, which means you're not going to be as explosive. Next component, the lumberjack hold. Training the core is key, but training the core in a functional manner, which is going to show up on the field, in my opinion, is that much more effective. So we're going to have the athlete drive the knee on up. And by holding it in this position, the load is opposite of the working leg. So now we get some tightness and some stability being developed across the body. Now, if you envision, and you've done this a lot of times, over 1,000-some tackles in your career, if Josh is now playing into me, and so now I'm the wide receiver or I'm the running back, and he's now in that tackling position, this is where he's taking on that load. And what he doesn't want to have happen is the core not be stable and strong enough to now be able to transfer that force through the ground.
No, that's a good thing because it's the offside foot is going to be the load-bearing foot.
Bingo.
So as you're holding it up and he's making that what I call 6-inch blow, he's doing it with that backside foot anyway. So that's a good job of activating it.
So now beginning to approach. Now you have to start to apply those posture elements and actually start to cover ground as an athlete. The key thing, come on over, as we talked about initially, is every athlete should learn how to backpedal. The backpedal, as you talked about, is a lost art. Not many coaches are teaching it, but it's something that is a fundamental that you should be able to do. So, key component of being able to effectively backpedal is the VMO. That's right here. That's a little quad muscle right there. It's going to help stabilize the knee and allow you to be effective as you're applying that force through the ground. So we're going to just take a band, as you can see, come on back. Good. Add a little more tension. He's going to just apply that force and making sure he's pushing the turf or the platform towards me without sitting on the heels. You mentioned a disadvantage of going to the heels. You want to talk about it?
So you always want your weight on the balls of your feet, which makes you athletic.
Okay.
So anytime you're doing applicable drills such as this, you want to make sure as he's backpedaling, his weight is still on the balls of the feet pushing off.
And we're going to go back to the old hold, lumberjack hold, but it's going to be a little bit different because we're going to add a stepping component to it. Because being strong in a static position is nice, but as athletes, we got to take that strength and turn it into movement. So the same idea as we talked about initially in the posture is holding that load, driving that opposite leg through, and then stabilizing. One more time. Let's do one more. Big drive, hold. Good, take it on down. Rod, that makes sense to you?
Yeah, I like that because this is the fact that driving your leg through is like simulating, once you make contact, you're driving that backside leg. So you're running through the ball carrier once you make contact.
So we're gonna come on here into the lunge position, and then we're gonna drive out. Boom.
Oh, okay.
Like that?
I like that.
Here we go, one more. Drive out, boom. See how heavy he's landing? You wanna be a little bit more soft. So let's try it again.
He's a linebacker off the line type.
You gotta be a little more athletic, a little bit softer. Perfect, there you go. So what you're trying to do here is obviously simulate the tackling component without the contact. But even prior to getting to the contact, you want to have your athlete strong and confident enough that they can take on the contact. We talked about coming out of breaks. And commonly what you see with athletes coming out of breaks is, step on over here, you're gonna get that internal rotation of the hip, and now you have to drive out of it, which means the inner thighs have to be strong. So Josh here is gonna now focus on training and strengthening the adductors. Just trying to get that foot a little straighter. Here we go. Common mistake is this: the hips are open and rolled back.
Yeah.
We want the hips to be nice and vertical, and we're not trying to get the leg way up. We just want a slight squeeze. Perfect. Good. Take it on down. Slight squeeze. 2-second hold. Take it on down. Last one. Slight squeeze. Take it on down. As the athlete becomes more proficient, we can begin to add a little bit of stress to it. Take it on down. One more time. A little stress to it. Take it on down. Nice job. Key thing in the contact phase is, number one, rotational strength. Athletes are taking on rotational forces, so you have to be strong in that phase of the game. Then number two, being able to apply force effectively through the ground. So what Josh is gonna do here is simply a rotational squat. Beautiful. Let's take it back the other way, Jay. And so what you're getting here, you're obviously getting some strength, but you're developing some mobility in the hips as well. And everything you just talked about on the football field, being effective as an athlete and getting your hips open and then closing them and driving through angles, that's what the game is all about. And now we're just taking that and just building a little bit of strength within it.
No, and it's good because DBs is critical. They're able to open their hips and have that strength when they open their hips to get to the receiver and close, and close that space.
Another thing you want to be strong in, as you said, is jamming wide receivers. And a lot of times we think of upper body strength, we go right to big bench press. No, you don't necessarily have to have a big bench press. You want to just have dynamic, active hands. So what we like to do is something very simple. Kid can go home at night, hit a couple of these before bed, but just a simple plyometric clap push-up. So Josh is going to do about 3 of these. Boom, boom. And all he's doing here is just developing that snap that we're looking for. And as you talked about, that's what you're looking for. You that good, quick, powerful jam. That's what the game is all about. These two movements we feel are effective ways to just connect the lower body to the upper body. Yeah, there are more ways that you can do it, but for a young athlete with minimal resources, this is something you can do on your own. It's simple to learn, and it's not gonna put you in a position where you potentially could be injured by just saying, hey, I want to get better. Before bed, hit a couple reps. Before bed, in the morning, same thing with the plyo push-ups. So I think these are effective ways for athletes to hopefully one day play at your level.